If I were to speak of war, it would not be to show you the glories of conquering armies, but the mischief and misery they strew in their tracks, and how, while they marched on with tread of iron and plumes proudly tossing in the breeze, someone must follow closely in their steps, crouching to the earth, toiling in the rain and darkness, shelterless themselves, with no thought of pride or glory, fame or praise or reward, hearts breaking with pity, faces bathed in tears and hands in blood. This is the side which history never shows. Clara Barton, Civil War nurse. Welcome back to Well House Exorcism. This is Shanna, your most amazing hostess with mostest and the best person ever. Who else is here?
This is the guy who's totally not afraid of heights.
Does he have a name?
It's PJ.
Every time. A husband has a name.
And this is Laura. I am the sister to the guy who's
totally not afraid of heights.
Yeah, not afraid of it. Sure, we'll go with that.
And our resident Gettysburg expert.
I wouldn't go that far. Just a bit of a nerd on it, so.
And
this is Ray, who is definitely afraid of heights.
not afraid to admit it.
Not afraid to admit it.
We were talking the story about at Gettysburg how we took him, PJ, up the tower and how he couldn't get back down. And so he posted
I just took a tortoise's pace at it. That's all.
I'm kind of amazed you didn't sit down and go toddler style.
I'm surprised that I made it down myself, now that I think about it.
You were white-knuckling it, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, but that's kind of like...
I don't think you were
that's kind of like my
PJ.
baseline. I don't remember you being that afraid.
I think you guys kept walking because you wanted to pretend that you weren't a part of us.
Not
I
with
think
those
I was
people.
dealing with my own fears at the time.
Yeah. Tunnel vision. No, PJ literally had both hands on the railing and was saying, oh, spit, oh, spit, oh, spit. And walking slowly down like this, totally pale. And I just have these visions, this memory of this like 5-year-old kid walking up the steps with his parents, looking really confused. this adult male is like freaking out, coming down, and old people passed us because we were going so slow. So PJ to our Facebook page posted a picture of one of the watchtowers. The most horrifying thing in Gettysburg is not the ghost.
Scariest experience I had there.
You could face your fears again this summer, you know.
I know.
Yeah,
and Hillview Manor.
You can take him back downstairs. I can't do that.
He can toddler it. He can just scoot
Maybe
on
he's
his
grown
butt.
out of it. It's been quite some time since that all happened.
Ray, that's very kind of you, but he hasn't.
No? Okay.
No, not when it comes to that stuff.
Oh, anyway, we're back. It's nice to have you guys, by the way. It's been
Thank you.
since
It's good to be
January.
back.
Huh?
Yeah.
So nice to have you guys
Been
here.
a while.
We missed you. I missed you. Talking just to PJ isn't fun.
Yeah, I did it for a long time myself. I was stuck with him.
I do it all the time. It's horrible.
It just gets weird. Anyway, today we are going to begin the Gettysburg proper.
Yes,
All right, so
finally.
We did a little intro, so a session 0, if you will. PJ went over all the history, and for our listeners out there, PJ rehashed it about 10 minutes ago, and Laura interjected with all the truthfulness and all the facts in between.
Just a little extra color.
No, all the facts. Not color. Facts.
Well, that too, I guess. Extra facts.
The meat and potatoes. All the
Additional facts. That's all.
I'll call it body.
The accoutrements.
No, I feel like she had all the statistics, the facts. The accoutrements like
Okay,
pretty
for
adjectives.
anyone who hears me quote things, it's probably almost certainly coming from the Ken Burns Civil War documentary. So, FYI, if I quote statistics, it's coming from that.
Listen to or read.
It's a mini-series. Like
It's a docuseries,
docuseries.
right?
Docuseries.
Yeah.
I mean, you get like the gist of it if you treat it almost like a podcast.
Yeah, I mean, you could just listen to it. And
What's it from, or what's it on?
It's not streaming anywhere right now. I have the
PBS,
DVDs.
wasn't it?
I do have the DVDs if you want to borrow. But
I
it was
do.
on Netflix. You can
Yes.
rent it on Amazon.
How many times
It's also
have you
on our-
watched this?
A
A
lot.
lot.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, tell the listeners.
Honestly, it happens to be on our phones too.
Yeah.
I'm feeling very like
Targeted
right now. I find the narrator's voice very soothing. Okay.
I love listening to battle and bayonet charges and blood and the blood and blood.
Mhm.
You know
explain it.
who Shanna doesn't like to listen to?
Who?
Dan Carlin.
Oh, I love Dan
that's
Carlin.
hardcore history,
Hardcore
right?
history.
Yeah, hardcore history.
I enjoyed listening to
No,
it.
you say you hate it. You hate his voice.
I
you
get
talk...
it though.
Okay, but his facts are amazing.
Yeah.
I know
Yes.
someone else who says, I don't hear it, but they say he sounds like, what's his name? Rushbaugh.
This is fun.
Rush.
I know who you're
Rush
talking about.
Limbaugh.
Rush Limbaugh. Rushball. The Rushball guy.
I am really
Apparently
tired, so
her,
FYI.
all of her facts only stem to Gettysburg, and that's it. How do you feel about Antietam?
No.
That's what I thought, yeah.
No, that's a whole separate conversation. We'll go there.
I have to get the
That's out of the
next,
scope.
the next miniseries.
Yeah. Oh, you could do a whole thing on the Civil War. It'd be very, it'd be a lot.
I would
Whole
just
pod.
rename the podcast. Yeah. No more Wellhouse exorcism for us. No more ghosts. No. So anyway, PJ did a historical background just to give us like the background of the Gettysburg battle proper.
Just a brief timeline of it all.
Yeah, because people call it the Gettysburg War. My 8th graders call it that. And I'm
Oh,
like,
really?
not a war, battle.
Oh boy.
Wow.
Battle. 3-day battle. Felt like a war. But anyway, he went over all the statistics of it, and we discussed a little bit about like where the different battles happened. And that's really it because we want to like, pique some interest, but we don't want to give too much away.
Well, right. I mean, because what were the statistics for the casualties again, PJ?
It was 46 to 40. No, 46 to 51,000 people.
So, like, really, when you get right down to it, no more Americans, or what am I trying to say? The most Americans throughout the course of history died as a result of the Civil War and that makes a lot of sense.
'Cause those
There's
Americans killing Americans.
Americans killing Americans.
Yeah. Well, and that's like I said on last week's podcast too. You have to think like maybe because Peach said our European listeners are like, oh, boo hoo, that's not a lot of people. But for us, we were a young nation, so putting in context, like it was difficult to even repopulate America because so many men had died.
Well, I just pulled up some statistics.
How did you not just know it in your brain?
I did not just know it. I should have. But so nearly 1/3 of the total forces engaged at Gettysburg became casualties. Ooh. Of the casualties, 7,058 were fatalities. And then there were another 33,264 wounded. And then another 10,790 were missing.
That. Oh, so people died from that
yeah.
too.
Well, I'm sure there were a ton that died after that.
There's actually a side story. I'm not sure if you learned this in your miniseries, but one of the creeks overflowed because like right after the battle proper, there was a big like rainstorm, and so flooding happened. And wounded who were down there getting water and getting rest to get rehabilitated drowned.
Ooh.
Yeah. So
that's bad luck.
In my research, I'm just like, man, Gettysburg,
just to survive a 3-day battle.
And you're hanging out by a creek.
To drown in a creek.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep. So there you go. So anyway, this week's episode, it's not about drownings yet. It is about something even better. Because I want to watch Ray squirm. It is about amputations.
A little louder, honey.
I'm sure there's more to groan about.
Oh, there will be. Air quotes medical care in this time period.
Oh, nightmare. I cannot think of anything scarier than medicine. Well, probably in the 19th century. But then I think it's probably scarier in the 18th century. Or the 17th century. Or the 16th
And they're
century.
dirtier.
Yeah, I know. It's just not
I think
a good
the end of the
look.
1800s would be okay. Because that's when,
I feel
they
like
started watching, like, how to control diseases. They were worried about, they were actually antiseptic then. Finally,
true.
like 1867, after the Civil War, we finally have antiseptic stuff. So anyway, in the latter half.
They had whiskey in the Civil War.
Makes you feel that. Oh, sorry. Different thing. Anyway, and then we're going to talk about 2 inns tonight. The Cashtown Inn because of amputations and the Farnsworth Inn, which you have gone to. Have you guys stayed there?
We haven't
No.
stayed there, no, but we've been there several times, and they
You
do a
love it.
lovely lunch.
Yes, that we've taken us there.
Yes.
I still am not sure
Are they the ones with the peanut
about
soup?
the
Yes.
peanut soup.
Okay,
I'm
yep.
not sure how I feel about
It's a
it.
classic. You have to try it. As long as you don't have a peanut allergy, gotta try it
If
there.
you like
Actually.
peanuts,
Yep.
I mean, it's...
It wasn't bad. Like, it's not what... Like, I want to eat peanut butter with some chocolate.
Yeah.
But it's not really peanut butter. It's
Like
just
if you
peanut.
could
Yeah.
juice a
Weird.
peanut, that's what it
Yes.
tastes like. It's just
Yeah,
peanut
it's interesting.
juice.
You
unique.
can't not eat it. Like,
Yeah.
you have to try it. It was interesting.
Yeah.
I'm not going to make it in my upstairs kitchen.
I have the recipe.
I know you do. Anyway,
In your upstairs kitchen? Is there another kitchen?
I know.
down here there
It's
is.
upstairs, down. Yes.
I have a mini fridge
Upstairs,
right there.
downstairs.
That counts.
I have drinks over here. And cashews. We could
have
cashew
Cashew soup.
Cashew soup.
New drink, new food, not drink. Anyway, so let's talk about amputations, shall we? Let's just hit it right on the head here, or on the limb, shall I say?
Let's
Gonna go
cut
out
to
on
the,
a limb.
cut to the chase.
Cut to the bone.
Ooh,
Get into the meat of this.
cutting remarks.
Anything, PJ?
Let's just dig right in.
We're gonna talk about digging in skin. Oh, this is great. Can I just can we put like a live video feed on Ray as we do this?
Why? I'm
'Cause
sure like they can
already-
just feel the energy.
they can
coming
feel the
off of me.
awkward.
Yeah, the tension, the
So we look
anxiety.
tense.
Now, I'm not going to ask Laura because she knows everything about Gettysburg. What do you guys know about amputations in the 1800s?
Sucked.
It totally sucked, and it probably involved something that resembled a saw.
Dad, doctors were called sawbones back then. Oh, yeah. So amputation is what it sounds like. You would take off part of your limb. So amputations were pretty common this time period, especially in Gettysburg. It was the number one thing they would do to save your life. Oh, go ahead.
I had to raise my hand because I have something to add. Something I know from the documentary is that
course you do.
because the reason there were so many amputations at this time is because of the mini ball, which
Could
was...
you please stop?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, the mini ball.
Okay, I'm sorry. You continue.
You are like a Gettysburg Rain Man.
Yeah, she really is.
You're not invited
It's
anymore.
not even just Gettysburg, but the Civil War in general. Like we would drive down Interstate 95, and you know, like on a
Fredericksburg. This is where this happened. The wilderness.
and then I
This
would
happened.
see like something from the documentary. I'm like, okay, Laura, what happened here?
Didn't we say when we were there one time with you guys that she should just take over the tours? Didn't you start talking to some people because they didn't have a tour guide? I feel like we lost Laura to a group of tourists at one point.
I'm not saying it's impossible.
I think
I'm
we
just
did.
saying.
Yes.
Because I remember like we took
but then
pictures.
they gave her
of-
back to us.
like
Like we're done with this.
No,
She
it's
needs to
just,
stop.
We will give you money.
She's a little intense.
I think we talked about getting segues and rolling away from you, but anyway. So amputations. Okay. The further it was done away from your core, the more apt you were to survive. Okay, which we know. So hip amputations, fun fact, 83% of those people would have died from hip amputation. 83.
I can't even imagine having that amputated. Like,
Do you want to try it out?
God no. but like, it's like just let me die.
Yeah.
Don't do that to me.
At that
Just-
point,
yeah.
it's gotta hurt. That's a lot of bone.
That's
a
mentioned the
lot of
quality
bone.
of life back
It's a
then.
lot of fat though. If you got a big butt, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
anyway.
I don't think any soldiers had to worry
Yes.
about that.
Not at this
Eating their
point.
hardtack and
I
everything.
have to worry about it. First class problem. First world problems. That was good. I don't know.
Yeah.
Hey, maggots are protein.
Third time mom problems. I don't know. An upper arm amputation, when it was done, your mortality rate was only 24%.
Oh, only.
Yes. Now, here's another fun fact. 3 out of 4 wounds were to the extremities because we were using things like the mini ball. Okay.
That's a fun fact.
Yes.
So fun.
Now, in the Federal Army, this led to 30,000 amputations. Fun.
Do you know why the mini ball caused so much
I'm
damage?
not there yet.
Okay.
This is gonna be fun.
That's on the
This is
next
gonna be a fun series.
So you need to send me ahead of time.
Strap
so
yourselves
I know.
in, listeners.
Be a lot of editing on this one.
Shannon's gonna
Oh
go,
no, this is all staying.
Yeah, Shannon's gonna go all teacher. You shut it.
Nobody
Hayden
likes
has
to show
to-
off.
No one likes it.
Did you raise your hand?
Mrs. Hayden, stop bouncing in your seat, Laura. Anyway. No,
Can I hear
Does
from
anybody
someone else?
Yeah. Does anybody else have an answer?
does anybody else want to read? No? Anyway. So, and, you know, some of our major generals, as we were talking about before this started proper, was like Stonewall Jackson had an amputation done, which is interesting. And he was actually pretty proud of it. Yes, don't raise your hand. And then General Howard also had an amputation. It's pretty cool. I do not want to lose a limb, though. Just saying. So I want to see Ray squirm. Now, before we get to the mini ball discussion, okay, do you know what it was like to be the surgeon this time period and how you would conduct yourself? as you prepared for an amputation?
I think that tourniquet would probably be involved.
Oh, that's cute. I meant like even before you even start.
Oh, you would have to get all sanitary like.
Drink heavily.
Maybe. So surgeons did not even perform careful hand washing before operating.
Oh, see,
Yes.
this is why I don't like medicine in the 19th century.
Yeah. The doctors were wearing blood splattered clothes. Sometimes they were pus covered too because it was really hot outside.
Oh, I
Mm-hmm.
don't even like that word.
Pus.
Pus.
We're going to get, that's like another page actually. When something was dropped, like their scalpel, it was simply rinsed in cool, often bloody water.
No, not even.
Now, they did use
Lovely.
sponges, but if they'd been used in previous cases, they simply dipped it in cold water, wrung it
Yes.
out, and then used on the
It's
next
not
person.
the most sanitary situation.
They didn't even understand what sanitary anything was.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Actually, there's
So like,
stories.
back then, they didn't even think to like before an amputation, they wouldn't even like use fire or whatever
Nope.
to.
Nope. And actually, there's stories, and I'm sure Laura will raise her hand to say this, but not going to happen. If you're a doctor in the field hospital, you have usually a door, because they would rip a door off and put it
Right.
down to perform these things on, and they would wipe their scalpel and whatever their saw bones, if you will, their saw off on their shirt and continue on to the next person. So yeah, imagine like you just wipe it across all that blood and pus, and next person.
victim.
Not victim, you're saving lives. Well,
Oh well,
24
Unless it's a hip.
24 to 83% of the time. No, the opposite.
yeah, opposite.
Yes.
Less than or greater than, yeah. Depending on where they're cutting.
15 to 75%.
Yeah.
There's something in there, it's fine. Now, the injuries, of course, as our Rain Man has already mentioned, were really because of the soft lead mini ball. And I was going to ask if we know what that is, but now that I know Laura does, I'm not going to call on her. With the capability, I'm quoting this from, I love us, Bruminate. That's the website, Bruminate, yes. With the capability to kill at over 1,000 yards, this soft lead bullet caused large gaping holes, splintered bones, and destroyed muscles, arteries, and tissues beyond any possible repair. These shot with them through the body or the head would not be expected to live. Isn't that lovely? So,
lovely.
what would you like to add to that, little Laura?
Well, I mean, just what you're saying that, like the modern bullets, they go in and they go through usually, or they just lodge. But the mini ball because it was so soft, would expand.
They called it mushrooming, right?
Right. And so, it wasn't that, like, the reason they had to amputate is because it would shatter like your whole bone, like
Yep.
everything. There wasn't anything left to save.
Yeah.
And there's actually photos of soldiers on the battlefield, deceased soldiers, and you can see that their shirts have been rifled open. And, and you might think, oh, maybe it was like, people going through to check for anything of value, but it wasn't. It was the soldiers themselves, because they knew if they were gut shot, they were dead.
Yeah.
So
Not to mention the fact they were gigantic in terms
Right.
of width. The mini balls are
Yeah.
huge. I have one upstairs. I have a
they're
mini ball.
heavy.
Yeah. But they're over 50 caliber. Like
Are they really?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're
Oh,
Yeah, they're
wow.
massive.
I didn't know it was that big.
Yeah.
Well, you're
Wow.
getting like sledgehammered with it. Like that's
Yeah.
what's happening. It's no surprise you're not going to be able to save the bone. And there's just these like gripping stories too of the soldiers as they're like dying in pain, like in the wheat field, for example. When they died, because of course they're there for hours on end. They're crawling and they're grabbing into the ground because they're in so much pain. They're like ripping. They found them dead with like tufts of grass in their hands because they were digging at the earth because they were in so much pain as they were dying
Yeah.
from the mini ball. So it may have been modern-ish warfare, but it was not a fun time.
No, it was a dangerous addition to
Yes.
war.
Yeah.
Added to all of that, Ray, just so you know, the Civil War was not prepared for the amount of casualties that they were going to have. They didn't have enough doctors. There were 11,000 Northern physicians, okay, but only 500 of those had ever performed surgery.
Yikes.
So one
Better
quote.
learn fast.
Yes. One of the doctors was quoted actually saying, Battlefield is the great place to learn how to be a doctor.
That happened a lot
Or
in
a
the World
surgeon.
Wars too.
Yeah.
Yeah, surgeon actually, yeah. I should
Oh
say.
yeah.
In
Absolutely.
the World Wars, if you were enlisted as a medic, like most of the time you're
Yeah,
just
you're
a high school
performing-
graduate
yeah.
or whatever, like an 18-year-old who was drafted and thrown a medic pack.
You
Like,
took
all
a
right,
bio
Right.
class, here you go,
good
doctor.
luck.
No, the Confederacy only had 3,000 doctors, and only 27 of those doctors had any training to really be a surgeon. Fun fact.
I can't do the math in my...
27.
27 out of
Can you
3,000.
imagine?
Out of
and then
3,000.
if you take into consideration the amount of like amputations that there were, like how many physicians to amputees?
Yeah. And only certain people were allowed to amputate. They're the operators.
That's
actually.
0.1% of all the of all the doctors.
Now, here's another fun fact. Medical school back then was just 2 years, sometimes less.
Yeah, well, I mean, what do you need to learn?
Yeah.
So here's your snake oil. Here's your saw.
I know.
Apologies, 0.9.
Here's your saw.
Yeah. Many doctors were just actually politically put in. They were just political appointments. And there were no licensing boards back then. So quacks were a thing. So yes, take my snake oil. So more fun facts for you there, Ray, just to let you know that you had someone random, helping you. Here's triage for you, though. Okay, triage. Your battlefield is happening. Okay. The hospital, if you don't call it the hospital, was really close to the front lines because you'd be there where you could save people. So a lot of doctors got killed actually during the entire war because they were so close to the enemy lines. But they would triage. If they saw that you were shot in the stomach or the head, they pushed you to the side because they figured you're going to die anyway. And they went to those that they could chop off limbs, if you will, like people that were less likely to die. And of course, that would be amputation.
Priorities.
Yep. So here is a fun little comment that I wanted to read here from, again, the Bruminate. The surgeon would wash out the wound with a cloth. So in the Southern Army, they ran out of sponges, so they used a cloth, obviously. And then they would probe the wound with their finger or probe, looking for bits of cloth, bone, or the bullet.
Probably weren't wearing gloves.
Nope.
No,
How you feeling,
definitely
Ray?
not.
Not great.
If the bone was broken or a major blood vessel torn,
Oh,
the
that
decision
hurt.
was amputation.
Oh, that hurt.
Ugh.
Yes.
It probably hurt. Yeah.
Someone shoving their finger in your wound and touching your bone to see if it's...
However,
it's broken.
However, all of your Civil War movies get it wrong. Chloroform was used quite often, actually. It was pretty common back
When
then.
they had it.
Yes. So that was one issue, was running low. But they did use chloroform to knock the guys out to amputate because they would have to. Otherwise, it wasn't going to happen.
Yeah.
And then you have to wonder how much gangrene would happen after.
Oh, I have that statistic for Ray. Yeah.
Okay.
Do you want to know how an amputation was performed, Ray?
With a saw?
I mean, like all the steps.
Sure.
There was a air quotes
Why
scientific way.
not?
Okay.
The gory details.
Yeah, air quotes, scientific way.
All right. So chloroform was administered. With the patient insensible, the surgeon would take his scalpel and make an incision through the muscle and skin down to the bone. He would make incisions both above and below, leaving a flap of skin on one side.
Got a thing too. I bet you those tools were not that sharp. That's one of the
Yeah,
things that-
right.
Well, I think they would resharpen them, but not after.
Even
After
then,
a long
but
day.
But
Yeah.
it's probably not like, the first thing that you think. I mean, if you really are putting yourself into that situation.
But scalpels are sharpened. Human flesh really isn't that. We're spongy.
Oh.
It's the bone part.
It's okay. The bone. They used a bone saw for the bone.
And probably you'd also break it.
Next
Well,
part.
not when
No,
you're
no, no,
making the
no.
incision,
No, you're not
though.
going to break the bone. Pay
When
attention.
you're starting with the
Taking Laura.
I'm just saying.
Miss Laura, could you sit down? Taking his bone saw, he would saw through the bone until it was severed. He would then toss it into the growing pile of limbs. Do you want to see a picture of a pile of limbs? I have it right here.
Sure.
Here you go.
Oh, goodness.
Anybody else in class want to see this? You've seen pictures. You've seen worse, I know. So anyway, after that, the operator, because that's what they're called, if you were the surgeon who was doing this, you're the operator, would then tie off the arteries with either horsehair, silk, or cotton threads. Imagine horsehair, Ray. Horsehair.
Can you say that one more time? They use that for what again?
Tie off the arteries with either horsehair, silk, or cotton threads.
That's pretty scientific.
Yes. The surgeon
That's
would...
pretty incredible.
Oh,
Like,
but
Yeah.
this is actually very
Not just
smart,
tying a
but
knot.
sounds horrifying. The surgeon would then scrape the end and edges of the bone smooth so that they would not work back through the skin. Makes sense, right? You don't want that to happen. Then the flap of the skin left by the surgeon would be pulled across and sewed closed, leaving a drainage hole. Okay, because obviously you're going to have drainage.
Yeah.
Drainage.
Ugh.
Do you know how long it took a good surgeon to do an amputation, Ray?
No, I don't know.
Take a guess.
4 hours.
Oh, that's sweet. 10 minutes.
Okay.
I was going to say 15 minutes.
10 minutes.
Wow, though. But yeah,
Well,
when
yeah,
you're
you
working
don't
with
have any of the prep.
30,000
Yeah,
injured.
if you don't have any of the prep.
Yeah.
And again, we're pretty squishy. So the hardest part is sawing through the
bone.
bone. And our bones aren't that thick.
But
Think
I mean,
about it.
I give them credit for like, like they know to leave like this extra skin. They know how much extra skin
It's
to
like
leave.
sewing. You gotta,
Yeah.
you gotta have a place
Can you imagine the first
Like an
one?
envelope.
Like where you don't
Except
do that?
your
Like,
projects
oh
generally
crap.
don't.
I gotta take some more.
Oh, ew. No, too much.
Next time will be better.
Well,
You, John, your leg's gonna be better. Don't worry.
don't look at this. It's fine.
This is my first one. It's a test.
I'm learning. It was only 27 of us have ever performed a surgery. But you would survive that surgery. But the biggest fear then afterward was, of course, as you guys mentioned, like fevers and pus and gangrene.
Infections.
So yes,
Just all around.
infections. Because what's anti-septic? We have no idea. So sepsis would kick in. They called it surgical fevers back then. Because that's what they termed it. Now, surgical fevers kind of covered a category of different things. The most common was pymea, if I can pronounce that correctly. But that is literally pus in your blood.
Ooh, I
Nice.
didn't even know that was a thing.
Pymea, yes.
Sounds
So
terrible.
yeah, it's a form of blood poisoning. You think about it, like that happens.
Yeah.
Just like
Yeah.
gangrene and stuff. Yeah. So anyway, nothing could really halt that. So if you got that, over 90% of those people would die. It makes sense because your blood is poisoned, right? Like my
Yeah.
mom was in the hospital recently with staph in her blood, and like she was in there
Yeah.
for a while, and she was really sick. And that was just from a cut in her hand getting staph on a cut. So another thing could be tetanus, of course.
Right.
Who would have thought? If you got that, 87% mortality rate. Other things too, but the one thing that I thought was interesting was called hospital gangrene. It was really during this time only. So I'm quoting from Bruminate because I just love that title. A black spot, so here's your hospital gangrene. A black spot about the size of a dime or so would appear on the wound. Before long, it would spread through, leaving the wound an evil-smelling, awful mess. How you feeling, Ray?
Queasy. I feel like
Festering. The word is
I feel
festering.
like PJ on a tower.
Yeah.
Where my legs are just a little bit like jelly.
The hospital gangrene, though, of the Civil War, it's extinct. It no longer exists.
Wow.
Yeah, we've not seen it since from what Bruminate says. But yes, so primary amputation rates, 28%-ish. Secondary amputation mortality rate, 52%. So it was worse to get the surgical fevers afterward. You had a 50-50 chance, pretty much. Which is kind of sad to think about because you survive all that just to die from a fever. Now, after all this, of course, you hear the term old sawbones is coming. That really has never left the idea of doctoring. We hear them, they're called quacks, right? That kind of thing. But what I found interesting is Dr. Jonathan Letterman was such a big spokesperson. He was a doctor, obviously, but he was a spokesperson for the doctors. He's like, you don't understand what we're going through. You can't knock us back without understanding what we're doing. No other job is being put through this. And I think since we've gone through COVID, we can look through the lens of other people's eyes a little bit easier. Like teachers, for example, I see that a lot better. But to quote this, it says, the Civil War surgeon worked in conditions that today would be completely unthinkable. Doors were often used as operating tables. There was a lack of water, basic supplies, drugs, and most of all, time. Take as an example the best known battle of the war, Gettysburg. There were approximately 50,000 casualties at Gettysburg in 3 days of savage fighting. All of this descended down on the heads of the medical men. For the most part, they measured up admirably. Many of them worked until they dropped. With a lack of time, knowledge, and basic supplies, the best bet for saving life was usually amputation as soon as possible. Thus, Letterman said if any complaint could be lodged against his surgeons after Antietam, it was that they had been too conservative in cutting off limbs. So, interestingly enough, like it has to be, amputation that's going to save your life within then the magic number was like within 48 hours. But now, of course, we mentioned like sterilizing things. That's going to help out. But like if you think about this time period too, if you go into an operating room, it's sterile. The doctors have cleaned themselves. They're wearing their scrubs, but there's also lots of good light and you have lots of helpers. You had none of that. If they were performing some amputations, it was being done with maybe a lantern over them. And they're doing this in farms, they're doing this in barns, they're doing this on bridges, they're doing it wherever they can next to fighting enemy lines because they do where the...
So distractions.
Yeah, all
There
that.
are its share of distractions.
Well, there's lots of stories of like doctors who are performing surgeries and they get shot and they die like on the table and over their people they're trying to save.
That
So Yeah.
That would disturb me.
Yes. Yes. But again, it says here, like, again, they could
I
be
mean, it
wounded or
would.
killed.
Yeah.
It's just
So it's just crazy to think that, like, that's what they went through. So I understand why they amputated. I just wish that they understood what, sanitary things were back then and how to sterilize their tools. I would not want to be in that time period and have them cutting me open with a scalpel that's been previously used on like 20 people or more.
Well, and yeah, as Ray pointed out too, sooner or later those saws are getting a little dull too. Like,
have
Yeah.
to.
yeah. I mean, and I don't know if I
not
was just
the-
trying to look. I don't
If
think
not the scalpels, the saws.
Yeah.
Because
yeah.
wood is hard. I mean, not that I've done it, but wood.
I have no interest in cutting
Yeah,
people's
yeah.
bones. But after all my
Neither do
research, I feel
I.
like I could. So,
Incidentally, my dad's an orthopedic surgeon. Yeah.
Yes.
So I remember him like telling me, it's just like when he was like, "Oh, maybe you'd want to be an orthopedic surgeon." It'd be like working with tools, like a carpenter. And I'd be like, yeah, Dad, but
on
like
the
wood,
human body.
yeah, but wood doesn't bleed, normally speaking. So let me just think
doesn't
about one.
scream in
Yes,
pain.
it doesn't.
What do you want to add to that, Laura, before I head in?
No, nothing.
Anything from our
Nothing
resident
of
expert?
true significance. I just was looking it up, and because I was just thinking about like all of the amputated
Nobody would have.
limbs. I mean, because there's
Yeah.
more than one account of like basically limbs coming up to like windows.
Well, and that's,
and and all of this, and I guess a lot of times they would just be buried in
Yeah.
a pit.
Some
The limbs
people,
you're talking about.
Yeah, the
if
limbs.
they wanted their limbs, they could take it with them because, Catholics, for example, in that time period,
Right.
believe
You
your
needed
body
the
had
whole
to be
body.
whole.
Yep.
And so they actually would perform burials on the limbs if they had time. Or if you were someone who was important, like Stonewall Jackson, for example, they might give you your limb.
Or
I-
sickles.
I think I would have wanted my limb. I think I would have felt an attachment. No pun intended.
Oh boy.
I'm just going to carry this around with me. Need a hand?
I feel like it's just right over there.
Oh no.
I'm going to put my best foot forward. So many jokes you could have pulled, PJ.
Yeah. I would have loved it.
Oh, boy. So why are we discussing this?
Can I get your digits?
Oh boy.
Okay.
This is taking a turn.
You can see yourself out, and I'm using my hand to point that way, right? Anyway. So why am I discussing this? Because of the notorious stories of piling limbs, just the covering up windows. That is the story of the pile of limbs you hear about from the Cashtown Inn. Now, a lot of these barns, these farms, these inns were used as places for hospitals and for places to make attacks and do plan attacks. But the Cashtown Inn was used in the basement for medical purposes. So I want to go into the Cashtown Inn and discuss some of the hauntings that happened there.
Yeah.
And then Laura, our resident expert, will take over and tell all the things I missed. And then she'll go into the Farnsworth Inn.
I actually know very little about the Cashtown Inn, so I'm excited to learn more.
I actually found this one very interesting. I actually enjoyed this on our
Yeah.
trip. Yeah, because I thought it was like, ooh, interesting, right? So anyway, the Cashtown Inn was built in 1797. So product of the American Revolution, right? So very American. And then it is, sold because it becomes pretty popular. So it is sold. So I do want to say I feel kind of bad for the owner of this because he gets it and then, Civil War. So it says, like many other businesses that were around during the American Civil War, the Cashtown Inn was taken over by Confederate officers and used as a general's headquarters. Once the war hit Gettysburg, any and every establishment was fair game for Confederate forces to occupy and make it their own. So I'm taking this all from the Civil War ghosts. This marked the second time in less than a year that Cashtown would be invaded by rebels. Just a few months prior, in 1862, the Confederate cavalry had occupied Cashtown under the command of Major General James Stewart. Who's that, Laura?
Jeb Stewart?
General James Stewart.
It's probably Jeb. I'm not sure.
Of course you would.
You
would know his
he was
nickname. Of course you
He's
do.
a cavalry general.
Yeah, well, there you.
Yeah, it's got to be him.
Of course. Well,
I mean, Jeb, my old pal.
it's actually a little unnerving.
His father-in-law
Ask me
fought
any
for the
questions
Union.
about Poe. We can what?
His father-in-law fought for the Union.
Of course you know that
And
too.
his wife apparently, it was just conflict,
Obviously.
family drama.
Drama.
Any relation
drama,
to Jimmy Stewart?
Not
do you
that
know?
I'm
Because,
aware
I think
of.
he's
It's
from-
possible.
He's from Pennsylvania also.
What about-
Not to say that Stewart is a terribly uncommon name.
Oh boy.
So anyway, so it gets bought by poor Mickley, and so this obviously it's taken over. So it says Cashtown was strategically located directly in Lee's supply line to Virginia, which served to be advantageous for Confederate forces. Soon, quaint Cashtown was overrun with legions of rebels, and Mickley found himself serving many an unwanted guest. Because obviously, when the war comes to your door, they take over, and you kind of go, "Oh, okay, just don't hurt me." And at the inn at the time had gained a reputation of being a fantastic inn. I'm not sure how it connects to Farnsworth for you, but it had fantastic facilities for daily bathing, which, Ray, you're welcome.
Whoa.
Daily bathing,
I
Ray.
know.
Fancy.
Yep. Comfortable beds, so nothing
Yeah.
like that strong, tick, nasty
Yeah,
stuff.
certainly more than the amputees got.
Yes. And it was in a peaceful neighborhood. So it was a nice, idyllic inn to go to. So, of course, General Hill goes, "Well, I want to go there and plan some Union attacks." All right. And he's like, "Well, I'm there. I can take advantage of all the luxuries that Cashtown has to offer." I assume that's his accent because he's the Confederate.
Done
Yes.
extremely well.
That was right on the money.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Cashtown.
She's here all night. I mean, literally, it's her house.
That's true. But anyway, fun fact there too, there were 2 large fire brick ovens in the cellar. And so there actually were Confederates who were in charge of baking bread. And so they actually had bread daily given to the Confederates. So there was an endless supply of food for their troops.
Oh, wow.
Isn't that nice? So there's a little happy thing there in the middle of the Gettysburg battle. You get some bread.
Well, happy for them.
Oh, yes. But apart from the bread happening, and you have General Hill upstairs planning Union attacks and talking in his fantastic Southern accent and taking his daily baths. You're welcome, Ray. In the basement, that's what I found intriguing when we were there. The basement was used for a makeshift hospital. And so that's where you heard the story. So wounded soldiers were brought there. And of course, some of them would never return to battle because half of them died. But that is where so many amputations were performed that when they were tossing out the limbs, it was so high, it actually covered all the basement's windows and it blocked out all the sunlight. They couldn't see to do any more surgeries except by lamplight because there were so many limbs outside the door. Yes. So there are many stories of piles of limbs because it's what we're doing day in, day out. But that is the notorious story of the Cashtown Inn. So I do want to say yes. And if you go into the National Museum of Civil War Medicine, there are lots of stories of piles of limbs. And there's actually one that's called The Story of the Piled Limbs. So you can read that and read about all the different places where there are lots of piles. It wasn't just there. So they have lots of different stories. But there are happy ones about finding trenches of limbs later.
Oof.
So yes, imagine when you yeah.
No.
Well, you just said it was a happy.
It was, but
What?
I pull up the sad stuff. So what I love about the story of the piled limbs from the National Museum of Civil War Medicine, it says descriptions of many field hospital sites after the Battle of Gettysburg, PA, contain 7 additional descriptions of piles of limbs. So 7, not just Cashtown. Okay, 7. And 2 of those accounts mention burials of amputated limbs. So 2. More of those places, more of the 7 could have buried them, but only 2 actually mention they do it. It is stated that the pile of limbs at the Lutheran Theological Seminary Field Hospital had accumulated for several days before being taken away and buried. That had to smell fantastic.
I would not want that job.
Because it
hard
was 3
pass.
hot days and then more. In the account concerning the Gettysburg Warehouse Hospital, it said that men came with horses and carts, collected the amputated parts, and buried them in long trenches. Imagine you have to take horses and carts to take all the limbs from there. However, the sites of the trenches are not stated. A new corollary appeared on this subject when, in 1906, while remodeling and enlarging the Adams County Courthouse in Gettysburg, workers discovered a collection of bones of amputated arms and legs apparently buried there while the building was used as the courthouse hospital by the Union Army in 1863. And you think, okay, that was 1906. We're good. That was 40 years after the war. You can kind of see it. No. They're still finding bones because in 1996, there was another story about finding remains.
Yeah.
Because you have people who are crawling away to their deaths and dying because they're disillusioned, they're lost, their heads hurt because they've been shot, they're confused, maybe they have concussions, or they're trying to run away because they're scared. So they're dying in random places. They're not being found. And then you have all these people who have left, and you're left to clean up the mess. So what do? And I'm sure Laura knows this. They buried the people where they died. So the next year when the farmers went to use the wheat field, guess what they found?
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, you have to think Gettysburg only had, I think, 1,500 people in the town.
I think it was less than 2,000. It was around like 2,400. It was less than 3,000.
Right. Yeah. I mean, because and then you've got, 30,000 people injured.
Yeah.
Like it's unbelievable when you think about like how many people, they were caring for.
Like 50,000 casualties, whether they were dead or not. Like,
There's
it's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah.
A lot of blood spilled in Gettysburg.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that's a fair assessment.
Well, and that's just the truth. And again, that's why the Clara Barton quote is so impactful. It's like you leave and then someone else is cleaning up your chopped off limbs. You know?
Yeah.
And then the dead people, if you weren't someone of major notoriety, like if you weren't something major, they weren't going to take your body.
Well, and they talk about how every house became a hospital in cases, and then they would use books as pillows, and they would be like ruined with blood. Everything would be soaked in blood everywhere you go. Your clothes, your floors, your carpets, your pillows, your books, your chairs, like your aprons, like
And
whatever.
the smell of rotting flesh as you're walking through town.
That's
Ray,
gotta
how
be
you doing?
rank.
Yeah, let's not forget
my
this
gosh.
is July.
This is yes,
and it was like
and it is
90
hot
something
for
degrees
folks
for the
that
battle.
don't.
Yeah, it took weeks to clean up.
Oh, yeah.
Weeks. And they were still finding dead bodies months later because, again, they had crawled away. And they found them, like, imagine, like, you go outside to get some wood to chop for winter and then,
It's Halloween.
Yeah, because like for folks that don't know, Gettysburg is not far from like the Mason-Dixon line. It is like your gateway to Maryland, where Gettysburg is located.
Oh, yes, Laura.
Yes.
Fun fact.
Her hand was up.
When Lee was marching north, he actually had his troops sing throughout Maryland the Maryland state anthem, Maryland, My Maryland, in the hopes that they would rise up and join him. But they did not. So could have turned the tide of battle, perhaps. But
Well, Maryland. No, it's West Virginia. Never mind. I was going to say, our last episode, we discussed white things. He could have asked the white things to help, but that's in West Virginia. Sorry. Different place. I apologize. So anyway, yes, we actually, on our last episode, we kind of discussed how gross it was, because that's something else they talk about, like when you go on these tours, it's like how you have to imagine it in 1860s. Like, it is disgusting. There are dead horses everywhere.
yeah, you're right. We're only talking about the people.
Yeah, this is people. And I want to apologize to all the mules and donkeys out there. I should use the word equestrians when I did more research. I was like, oh man, I have only talked about 1/3 of the dead animals. So horses, mules, and donkeys. So all the equestrians. And there's actually a story about how at one lady's house, and this will be a different story for a different episode, but there were horses, lined up. They're all hitched, and they all got shot. And they were left there to die. And so when this lady comes back to her house, she's too old to move these horses off her property. So she put dirt on top of them, and they just kind of like dissipated over the next couple of years. But there's a picture of this big pile of dirt because she couldn't even dig a hole to put, it was impossible.
Just covered him.
Yeah. So the smell permeated Gettysburg years after.
And let's also not forget, not to get super gross, sorry, Ray, but you also have, 50,000 men coming into this tiny little town needing facilities throughout 3 days, that's still a
right.
thing, and they're still eating.
I skipped that part
so
because
hot, and the uniforms were so warm.
They were wool.
They
They were wool.
smelled bad to begin with.
Yep.
It would have been a
That's not something I should
Memorable
like.
experience.
Yeah.
I skipped that part of my reading because I just knew that it would be a little too much for Ray. But yeah, doctors were not just working with dirty materials. There's fecal matter and vomit and pus all around them.
Because you're
too.
going to respond to pain.
yeah.
Well, that and you have to go. You have to go somewhere.
Yes.
Well, yeah, I mean, but
Well-
you're right too. And as you're dying, it's a natural body
Yeah, I
mean,
response too. So
yeah.
that would have been everywhere in the hospitals and everything, everywhere.
So if you dropped your scalpel and you wiped it off on your shirt,
Eek.
see, I cut
mean-
that part out, right?
Don't hold that scalpel in your teeth in between
No.
surgeries. all I'm
That's
saying.
why 50% of
I'm
people
s-
died once they had their amputations done.
I'm so glad I wasn't around for the Civil War. I don't think I would have made it past Main Street.
Can I give you a side comment that has nothing to do with the Civil War, really, for you, Laura and Ray? But PJ knows the story already.
Oh.
I was watching. It's called Gettysburg. This movie is just called Gettysburg.
Oh yeah.
The opening scene is them at the Army Hospital, correct? Ish. So it's
Yes.
within the first couple scenes.
It's been a while since I've seen it.
Yeah. So my ex-boyfriend wanted to watch it, and I was like, okay, cool. And at the time, I worked at Burger King, and that we had the best veggie burgers. Like, they were amazing. They're ones they went through the broiler, so they actually cooked. The ones they have now are disgusting. So back then I was like, oh my god, a veggie burger. You put extra ketchup on it and pickles. Oh yeah, it's gonna be, I'm so excited. So we go back to my house, we're watching it, and I'm eating this veggie burger, and blood splashes on the white screen, if you like, the white of the hospital room.
Well,
The makeshift tent, I should say, the
scene.
tent. And so you don't see it, but you see the blood splash. And I look down at my veggie burger, and it's just all ketchup. And I'm like, oh, I can't eat this anymore.
It's just
It's
veggies.
just ketchup.
Oh, it's all the ketchup on there. So to
Rail
this day,
appreciate that.
I cannot eat a veggie burger. Well, they don't make the good ones anymore.
Impossible burgers are good.
But yeah, so that destroyed it for me. Anyway, back
Ray
to
also
Cashtown.
can't do ketchup.
He just doesn't
Yes.
like ketchup.
This episode is making me very, very queasy, anxious.
Would you like-
Golly, this is uncomfortable.
Golly,
Yes, I'm very uncomfortable right now. I need air.
Well, the good news is I'm on my last page of my stuff here, and then it's Laura's turn. So, I mean, like, I'm almost done.
Okay.
Because we got to discuss the haunted part now, right? Like, so we did all the gross stuff. So, Cashtown Inn, of course, is haunted. I mean, you can't not be haunted with all the horrible stuff that happened there. Before and after, you're going to have some weird stuff happening. So there, if you go to Cashtown Inn, they do have a collection of photographs that show paranormal entities there.
I thought you were going to say, like, feet.
No, that was inside.
Arms.
That was in here. I already showed that to you. But they have like strange orbs and frightening skeletal figures in their pictures. So I know we kind of mentioned in the last episode that you have some pictures that people want in Gettysburg because your pictures are so cool, which we didn't tell them what it is. We didn't. Nope.
And I don't think we should. I think we should just post it and let people
Yes. Let them
tell us what they see. Because to me, it's very clear. But I think it's also one of the things where when you say it, you can see what other people...
Yeah, you can put the image in their head. But
Right.
It's tough, though, because we also have to say where to look because
It's
that
us.
wasn't there when you took
Well,
the
I have
picture,
a
you know?
zoomed in
Yeah, okay,
version,
that's
though.
better.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
But here, the Cashtown Inn. So, orbs and skeletal figures caught on camera. It's pretty cool. Now, guests who stay there do say they hear lots of loud banging on the doors at night, which wouldn't be surprising because of that residual haunt.
Yep.
Lights are turning on and off without explanation. Sounds like your guys' house.
Yeah,
And doors lock on their own. What the heck? Like, I'm not okay with that.
that would be irritating.
Imagine you get locked in the basement, Ray.
I actually locked Laura out of the house earlier today.
He did.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I know, right?
You can't
Shanna's
just...
done that to me.
I just left the keys in the house by accident. It's my fault.
No, I mean the time you locked me in your mom's basement.
That's not for the podcast. That was on
We'll
purpose.
hear about that later. That sounds entertaining.
It was hilarious. But what I think is the most hilarious of all these ghostly encounters, some guests have complained that when they've returned to their rooms, they found their luggage has all been packed up on its own.
It's time for you to leave now.
We don't want you here. Where's Laura? She knows everything. Bring her back.
I'm waiting for your go on. Go on. Get.
Excuse me, this is my spot. But another couple has heard footsteps in their room, of course. People have heard incessant knocking on their doors at night, especially. And once the knocking stops, the footsteps walk right up to the bed and then stop at the foot of it. Which reminds me of Savannah.
I was going to say,
Cool.
that's similar to your experience in some ways. Yeah.
And then their mattress begins to shake and it compresses down as if a ghost entity was pushing on it. Again, very similar to our Savannah story. So I was like, hey! Now, of course, when that couple had that happen, they laid perfectly still and watched in horror as the mattress began to ripple, similar to how water is affected by a pebble thrown into it. The woman felt something grab her shoulder, but it was not her husband.
Ooh.
Right? Yes.
I mean, consent is still a thing, ghosts.
Yeah.
I know.
Maybe it was a massage. So, you know, going
No, it's
Still.
for
Excuse
some
me,
shoulder activity.
you're in my spot.
Wake up. Hey.
I was just amputated. I need to lay down. Get.
Hey, what are you thinking about?
Can you tell me a story? I'm sad. Anyway, so the greatest number of apparitions are actually seen and heard on the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, which are the same days as the Battle of Gettysburg.
Oh, that makes sense.
Interesting.
Oh,
So-
we should go on
It's
those
like, yeah,
days.
it's well, it's always
First
so
off, it's
busy
crowded.
though.
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't have to be necessarily July, but like maybe like early in the month. On other months, it's similar, cyclical.
We'll get there at the end of June.
kind of. Never mind.
But it's interesting. So it's like, it's that cycle of events. It has to be on that time period. So it's all the normal like stuff you would expect, the knocking happening and the pacing. They can hear talking, like, but they can't make out the words. Very residual. Nothing really mean except for the, luggage being packed. That's kind of funny. Anything you want to add to that, Laura?
No, I think that was fascinating. Now I want to go see the Cashtown Inn.
Yes. So if you're there, you should go. And a lot of these places have like their own mini museum. So you should take a look at all those pictures because a lot of those are taken by people who stay there. So it's kind of cool. Like it's that firsthand, like, look what I saw this time kind of thing. Any comments from you two?
No, I had a question
Go ahead.
about
I'm ready.
a Gettysburg hospital, but I found which hospital it is. And I think we're talking about later. So
Oh, which one is it?
the Gettysburg College.
Yes, we are talking
Yeah.
about it later.
So 'cause that's one of my favorite stories that comes out of that place. So I'm gonna wait.
Yeah, we got to
I'll
hold
wait for
off
that
on that.
one.
That's episode 3. I have it written down.
I think you're right, if I'm
Yes.
remembering your notes correctly.
All right, Laura, take it away for the Farnsworth.
Okay, so the Farnsworth house is now an inn, but at the time it really was a house. And it is on a parcel of land that was actually owned by Reverend Alexander Dobbins. And you'll hear the name Dobbins later
Dobbin House, yeah.
for the Dobbin House, yes. But I think he was an early settler, and so he owned a lot of the land. So the house itself was built in 1810. It's a brick structure.
It's quite
and
beautiful.
It is. It's a beautiful, beautiful
Yeah.
structure. And at the time of Gettysburg, it was owned by Brigadier General Elon John Farnsworth. And so after the failure of Pickett's charge, and Farnsworth was a Union man, but after Pickett's charge failed, Farnsworth led a charge against Pickett's troops, and that ended up claiming the lives of Farnsworth and 65 of his men. So, but the building itself, if you visit it, you can actually see bullet holes still
Yes,
in the
I
building
remember that.
today. And there's at least 100, some people say 135 individual bullet holes, which is unbelievable. The reason
wild.
for it's wild that it's still there today. And the reason that there were so many is there were Confederate snipers who were posted within the building to pick off Union troops as they were crossing Cemetery Hill, and so the building was being stormed by Union troops to get that sniper nest basically. And it was also used as a makeshift hospital and headquarters, as you said, Shanna.
Yeah,
pretty
all
much
the houses.
everywhere was. So there were certainly a lot that happened there within all of those walls. So
was
there,
the hospital in the basement.
I think the hospital, from what I've read, was the first floor and basement primarily, but I think they were kind of sticking people wherever they could.
Yes. Yeah.
And so Farnsworth reportedly has quite a few different ghosts. I think one of the saddest ones in some ways is a little boy.
The kid story, right?
The what?
What's his name?
Jeremy.
Oh, Jeremy.
Yeah,
Yes.
Do you have Jeremy's story there? You
No,
want to go
no,
through
I
it?
just remember it was
Okay.
a little.
And so this actually happened sometime after the Battle of
It's
Gettysburg.
like there's only one civilian was killed at Gettysburg, which we're saving for a different episode.
Right. No, this happened afterward. It was a young boy. We don't know exactly how old, but he would watch the other kids like playing in the street and things like that. And apparently, Jeremy was out in the road and a horse and carriage ran him over.
Aww.
And so he was killed. His body was brought back to the home. And apparently guests of the inn have seen that accident replay over and over.
Oh my gosh, could you imagine?
Like they still can see that happen in the road today, which
Oh
would
my
freak me out if you see a little boy getting,
Yeah, right.
oh my gosh, I can't even imagine. And apparently the ghost of his distraught father has also been spotted in the window of the hotel watching the scene.
Oh my gosh.
Which, so it's so sad to think of a residual haunt in that way. But
I wish they would like go on to their eternal rest.
Well, and
I
it's probably just a
know,
residual
but there's
haunt, though.
more.
You know, it's just
Is it the liminal space? Where's Kyle?
it's just this energy that's been imprinted on the land. You
Yeah.
know.
It's just so sad.
But I want to say, like, there have been stories about Jeremy where, yes, that's happened, but he actually will go on like ghost tours and stuff like that. You know, and he'll even say, which would scare the hell out of me. Yes, Daddy.
yes.
Yes, right? Like, that would be something that they would hear on these ghost tours. And like I said, if anybody said that to me, I'd freak out.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, people
Well,
who
those
are...
words in particular.
Because, Farnsworth...
No, Daddy.
No, Daddy. Farnsworth does have a ghost tour, which I've not been on, but I really would like to do. But yeah,
Road trip.
But yeah, visitors have heard a little boy's voice talking during that tour. So
maybe, yeah, like you said, it's residual energy, but maybe his actual spirit is in a
It's still there.
well, and is in a better frame of mind if he's saying that.
yep. But there have been many other ghosts that have been spotted, including as it was also reportedly a spot on the Underground Railroad.
Okay.
And there's an area called the Slaves Corner, and so they have seen. So people believe the spirits of former slaves there. There have been a number of Confederate soldiers that have been spotted specifically in the attic where the snipers were located. And so there was one in particular that a guest was staying in the garret room who entered the bathroom, saw blood running down the walls, which is terrifying.
Some Stephen King stuff right there.
Yes.
Yes, and incidentally, wasn't this a soldier had been killed? He was
Directly
shot,
above. Yes.
right? Above.
In the attic
And-
above. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So that would be terrifying.
So it's probable that his blood
Yeah.
would have like
down.
dripped down
Yeah.
into that room. Yikes.
Yeah.
I'll have them pack my luggage now for $300.
And
Well, I'll just back in there, toss it in.
What is get the hell out?
Potables? No.
and so the last ghost that I'll kind of end with here is a little more lighthearted. Unless, Ray, do you have anything else to add? I was going to end with the
no.
kitchen's chef. No? All right. So there
Does he get mad if
is...
you mess up the peanut soup?
there is a cranky cook in the kitchen, apparently. And she's described as an older woman who's dressed in period clothing. And she's seen roaming around the halls and kitchen. And she's usually seen looking over the products in the kitchen and pantry. Almost like she's sort of like, oh, what do we have for dinner
Yeah.
tonight kind of a thing. She's still being nosy that way. And in what seems to be attempts to make her presence known, she often frequents the restaurant area, which is where we have been. And she is rude to the staff. She pulls on their apron strings, pushes them, will even knock them down on occasion. So she's said to be...
So this is lighthearted?
well, she's apparently
Maybe she's just
the...
playful.
Yeah, she's the only
Or maybe particular.
entity that is known to be physical at the Farnsworth house.
So if that's the worst, I don't think that's so bad.
Do they hear like any knocking and walking kind of things? Like the normal things you would imagine?
Yes, yeah. I mean, so one thing I don't have handy, and it may be, in the pages you have there, PJ, but the number of rooms, I know there's quite a few rooms. I want to say there's 6 rooms, but they're all reportedly haunted, and they all have kind of the standard things that we would expect: the orbs,
Yep.
the lights flickering, the
Footsteps going up and down the
footsteps,
halls.
water turning on and off by itself, right?
I was just thinking the next time we go to the Farnsworth Inn, we should make it like a group trip and just everybody have like their camera phones like at the ready and just kind of like snap
Oh, yeah.
photos.
We
Yes.
had this
Oh.
discussion on the last episode. Like, this is the difference between PJ and me, is that there's a story about a white thing on Muddy Creek Road in Greene County.
Okay.
And it's 2014, and there's a couple driving in their car late at night, and a white thing is spotted. So it looks like this big white wolf, the bushy tail, and it has a big mouthful of teeth. And the husband's response is, I got to get my phone out and get a picture of this. The wife was like, we need to go. We need to get out of here. And so the husband finally listens to the reason of his wife, drops the phone, and heads.
Fine.
And I would have done the same thing, but like honestly, like sometimes you can just take pictures, and the orbs or what have you, or the presences
It's
don't
like
manifest.
Savannah. We did it in our room,
Yeah.
the 1700.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
1790.
I
That was
still have my
And
dowsing
frankly,
rods.
Me too.
What? Thought they over there?
Yeah, they're over there. Yeah.
incidentally, a lot of ghost stories seem to revolve around pictures and cameras, and
Yeah.
even camera malfunctions that have to do with
We have pictures
the
of your
whole
woods.
Gettysburg
We'll get into that
Oh,
when
yeah.
we talk about Devil's Den
experience.
Ugh.
too. But
Yep.
yeah, some interesting things I saw from Farnsworth was was probably the ghost of a midwife that will tuck you in when you get under the blankets. Like you'll just feel someone tucking you in.
I want
That's-
that one.
And,
I
missed
don't.
That room.
No.
Was there a number? Because we're staying there.
and
What's her name? I'm like, midwife? Call the
Bessie,
midwife
come
here.
and then there's a room called the Sarah Black Room.
Yes.
And apparently you can get pictures of like someone looking out the window from that room. But
Who
also
Sarah Black is?
no, not
I do.
not from
Laura?
the article I have here.
Miss
I
Laura?
do.
What were we gonna say? Well,
But in the middle of the night, you can hear someone playing as the article calls it, a Jew's harp, also known as a mouth harp.
yeah.
In the middle of the night, you know
What kind of harp?
the things that you put in your mouth and you flick the this little like band. And it's like wow wow wow. And
Oh.
here,
Ray
I'll-
will need to
I'll
buy
show you a
one
picture.
now.
This.
Our
'Cause
our
I-
listeners
These.
cannot see.
Oh.
Yeah, but for Ray, if you look up Jew's harp or mouth harp,
Yeah, that's
you'll be like, oh, it's that thing. You know, it's like people playing the rubber band with their mouth. You
Yeah.
know, it's that weird musical.
whiny,
well,
one,
Clink,
whine,
clink,
whine
clink.
thing. Yeah.
yeah.
Yep.
I'd be like, seriously, pipe down. Where is midwife Bessie? I need her.
Seriously, I need to be tucked in. Kiss on the forehead would be good.
No, too much.
So Sarah Black. So after Gettysburg, it was the Farnsworth house was owned by the Black family, who ran it under the name the Sleepy Hollow Inn. And
That's not creepy.
well,
Well, I think
the Black family
you're from-
advertised.
Business people. Clearly.
There's bullet holes inside of
I
our.
know.
That
Yeah.
is actually exactly. I was just going to say that's
There's a niche
exactly
for this.
how they advertised their inn is using the historical fact that the home had 135 bullet holes riddled in one of its eyes from the Battle of Gettysburg. So in the Sarah Black room, lights turn on and off, faucets have suddenly sprayed out water, shades roll up and down, and window shutters bang on the
Ooh.
inside. A man was sleeping when he awoke to feel someone sitting or lying down on the bed beside him.
Hey, Ray.
No, thank you.
And the
Been
same
there,
man.
done that.
See, it gets weird though, because
It's
the
not
same
welcome.
man heard whispered voices and then the sobbing of a crying child. So he
Dang.
got the whole family.
The
I
whole
know.
thing.
Yeah,
Aw.
yeah.
I wonder if that was Jeremy.
It could be a sobbing child.
Just a baby.
Huh.
Middle of the night, it's probably a baby crying.
Could be.
Yeah.
All right, so
well,
here-
I don't know.
Here's a mouth harp for you, okay, for our listeners out there. So imagine in the middle of the night, like 2 a.m., you hear this.
I think you could jam to this.
That's so.
But I would not want to wake
No,
up
you
to
don't wanna
it.
wake up?
No.
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 It sounds like
Well, first off, I don't like to wake up at all. I mean, well, I do. I'm thankful when.
it sounds
but-
like throat chanting.
It
Yes, it
does.
does sound like
Yeah.
that. Mm-hmm.
Ugh. Yeah, that's terrifying.
Luggage packed or mouth heart?
Do we leave a tip for that?
Thank you. Save me a packing. Did you steal my stuff? did you scratch a Nike sign off my flip flop?
Nope.
Looking at you, 1790.
Tuck me in and kiss me goodnight. I'm ready to go.
We'll tell our Savannah story at some point. Because the
Yeah.
reference to a Nike sign getting scratched off.
Talking
means
about the whole
nothing.
trip down
I
there,
know.
too.
This trip home, where you and I had food poisoning.
We preemptively apologize to the people of Fayetteville when we talk about that.
Yes.
Yeah, we weren't on the best part of Fayetteville, I don't think.
No.
Oh.
I hear it's very nice.
You're in the
just not
wrong
where we were.
hotel.
I
Wow.
love traveling to the South, though. I really do.
Yeah.
I like doing the whole, like, experience with, like biscuits and gravy, or like going to a Shoney's, or
Shoney's.
Real,
yeah.
real
Waffle House.
greens, real
yes,
okra.
yes,
Mm-hmm.
My first ever hush puppy.
collard greens.
Good
Going
hush
down
puppies.
south.
I mean,
Going
Wow.
down south there.
I gained like 30 pounds in 2 days, but it's
It's worth
it.
it. Well, I think that's all we have for tonight then.
For tonight, yes.
No time for Dobbin House tonight, and that's okay.
I'm sorry.
Well, we just talked a lot.
Yeah.
The one thing I thought was kind of interesting about the Sarah Black room, you know, like how random things turn on. I feel like there's a lot of this with like ghosts. Lights turn on, faucets on. And I wonder if there's still like some sort of novelty with these spirits. Because for a lot of, especially for Sarah Black, she probably didn't have.
Electricity.
That's true.
I want to know
probably
how
not
they
running
turn
water.
these things on.
And I wonder if these ghosts are like, this is too cool. We've never
Whoa.
had this
The
before.
light comes on!
Yes.
You
I
see
wonder.
this?
What's he doing again?
Yes. Aw, and then somebody turns it off. And they're like, "Aw," and then they turn it back on.
How much
I can
energy
totally
it
see
took me to turn that on? A lot. Oh, man. Running water, too. Imagine, like, a running water. You're right. That'd be so
I mean,
cool.
it's such a luxury for, like,
Indoor
you know,
plumbing.
if
Yeah.
you're a ghost from the Civil War era, and then, like, your place, let's say the Farnsworth Inn, is so updated with all these accoutrements.
Oh, sure. No, I mean,
Yes.
Civil War, you were literally
would-
using chamber
I
pots.
mean, honestly,
Yeah.
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 If you're at the Cashtown Inn, you got daily baths.
Woohoo.
I mean, if I passed away in, like, the early 90s, I would wreak havoc on the Wi-Fi.
I would love the idea that we can actually watch whatever we want now, like on Peacock and everything.
When was the last time you bought a movie?
Yeah, let's just be honest. You
Yeah.
know.
Well, even-
Amazon.
yes.
We bought Penhurst.
Oh, yeah. Well, we rented.
Rented.
Yeah.
It's been a while.
Yeah, right.
Even like going to the movies, just because everything comes out so. And I know we're digressing, but
Yeah, we got lost.
We're
somewhere.
totally going
Yes.
to see Dune, though, in November.
Okay, this is not part of my podcast. So anyway, on our next episode, then, let me pull up my grandiose list here. We will discuss the Dobbin House,
all right.
the Shriver House, the Jenny Wade House, and the Weichert House. So 4 houses.
Got it.
Okay.
And 4
Episode-
hosts.
I know. We each
Whoa.
gonna do
Whoa.
one.
Yes.
Mhm.
Ooh, that sounds.
Episode 3 then will be the Gettysburg Hotel, the Gettysburg Orphanage, and Gettysburg College.
Ooh.
Nice.
Ideally, to do all 3 of those, and we'll have an interview with your friend.
Yes.
Either its own episode or as a part of that. We'll figure that out.
Okay.
And then I put down for episode 4 a lot of different fights, but there's going to be too much, so that's going to be 2 episodes there.
Okay.
It's
We
gonna
got a
be
whole
6
series happening.
It's going to be a 6-week-long thing. And Kevin Paul, my new best friend, who gave me the second book, Haunted Hills and Hollows.
Oh,
Part- yeah.
yes.
He wants to do a Zoom interview. So that'll be popping up in there somewhere too.
Nice. Oh, cool.
Yep. So there you go. Obviously, you'll be there because he has questions for your house too. He listened to your story and our stories, and then he's kind of getting caught up on all the episodes. But he's like, I have some questions.
So do
We
I.
have some answers.
Yeah, he's seen some stuff. So
Yeah.
all right. Well, thank you so much for coming back.
Thank you
It's
for
so
having
nice to be
us.
back with you guys.
Yeah.
6 weeks of us hanging out in our basement. on a
Woohoo.
Tuesday.
I'm in.
I
I'm
love
in.
it. I love it. Well, in any case, we do want to close with one comment to kind of put us back on track. The idea of these battles and what happened, to go back with the whole Clara Barton thing. So, Ray, I believe you're going to share it.
I will, if you wouldn't
All right,
just
so-
give me another 10 seconds, guys. This quote: "We are waiting at the cot side and closing their eyes one by one as they pass away. I cannot but think that we shall win at last, but oh, the cost." This is from a letter to Mr. Baldwin after Cold Harbor and the Wilderness, the 30th of May, 1864.